So I want to thank everybody for attending our webinar today. We are excited to explore this topic together. My name is Deanna Chancellor, and I'm the project director for the Native Child Advocacy Resource Center. And I have the pleasure of introducing Pam to you guys today. So let me just get my notes here. So Pam Karalunas has been involved in the area of child sexual abuse since 1986, when she began as a volunteer providing support for non-offending caregivers of children who had been molested. She was a founding member for the RCPC Stevie's Place Child Advocacy Center in Fairbanks, Alaska for 6 years. She assisted with a therapy group for convicted sex offenders. Although retired from this position for 12 years, Pam served as a chapter coordinator of the Alaska Children's Alliance, an accredited state chapter of the National Children's Alliance. She's provided many workshops, lectures, and trainings on child sexual abuse, the CAC model, and multidisciplinary response to child abuse, and has been involved in the startup, accreditation, and reaccreditation of many of the CACs in Alaska. So joining me in welcoming Pam today as she presents this workshop on case review, working together to improve outcomes for our cases.
Okay, thank you. One slight correction, and that's that I've only been retired from the position as the chapter director for 2 years. I held that position for 12 years.
Oh.
So just putting it out there. I'm really excited to be here. I love doing this work. I love working with families. I love working with CACs. I was actually doing this work before CACs, before there were any in Alaska, and when CAC, the very first CAC in Huntsville, Alabama, began. So I had the opportunity to see the huge difference that this particular model makes. And case review in particular is really important. In fact, we were doing something similar in Fairbanks, Alaska, when CACs came out, because as I was working with caregivers, it was so clear that providers were not talking to each other. Caregivers were getting mixed information and sometimes conflicting information. So whatever the family did, they got in trouble with somebody. And people weren't sharing their wisdom and knowledge. So we started something, we called it interagency case staffing. Same thing, sort of different name and title. And I'm really excited to be here. And I would say that if any of you have technology, like good technology vibes, please send them my way, because I'm not at home. I'm actually in Kodiak testifying at a trial, and the internet was giving me fits. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, and if you all would do that too, that would be awesome. So we did test this out. It did move. Now it's not moving. Pardon? Okay, so okay. Well, okay, let me try this again. Let me stop sharing and see if we can make this work, because it's not working now. And I was worried about the internet. Hang on just a second. I'm gonna stop sharing and start it up again.
Tomorrow. My Scooby outfit.
Who comes up with these rules? Okay. We'll see if this will work. Please go slideshow. Okay. Oh, yes, okay. whenever I'm doing presentations, I always like to take a minute to acknowledge and honor the indigenous people who are the ancestral caretakers of the land that we are all occupying, even if there's someone from another country. So I just want to take a minute to think about that. I would also like it if you would put in the chat where you're from, what state, what community you're from, because that's always kind of fun to know. And I know we have at least one other person from Alaska on, and I think there's actually going to be several other folks. So thank you for doing that. Oh, Arizona, that's awesome. Michigan, I was in Michigan doing a site review. Ooh, wow, awesome, you guys. Reno, this is cool. Thank you. So I expect you all know this, but I wanted to start out by reminding ourselves why we have an MDT. Because sometimes when I'm traveling around the country during site reviews, sometimes it feels a bit like maybe we don't remember why we do it. And so first of all, it's to coordinate the response. Like I was saying earlier, before CACs, it was very difficult for families. First of all, it was before email. Okay, I'm dating myself, I know, sorry. And people had to place phone calls. And I think you probably all have experienced how challenging it can be to get your phone calls returned because people are really busy or sometimes they just don't want to talk to you. And so it's so critical to coordinate that response. Another really, really critical part is to share the information and the knowledge and the experience that people bring to the table, because we all bring something different. And if we're not sharing it, we're not helping the child and the family or the case. And sharing that information, of course, helps us make better decisions. And working together, we can help figure out what are the best ongoing services available in our communities for the victims and their families. And sometimes that's a challenge because some of our communities don't have very many services. And then holding offenders accountable, which is a huge thing. Oh dear, am I going to have to go back every single, oh, here we go. So, teamwork. It really is all about teamwork. And I'm guessing most of you on this call have had the experience of team members not coming to the table, or when they do come to the table, they don't participate. And when a critical member doesn't participate, it's not helpful or useful. And so I sort of, as you can see, decided to liken it to sports. And who suffers? Everyone suffers. It's just amazing. Families and kids suffer the most, but so do the team members. It's amazing to me when I'm going around the country doing site visits and those areas where there's a highly functional, well-connected team members, I hear things like, I couldn't do my job without the team. It makes it so much easier. It reduces my stress, those kinds of things. So when you're functioning well as a team, it does make a difference to everyone. So I'm going to try technology. I'm going to see if I can get this. Now I'm trying to figure out how to make it go. So what did you all think about that video? It obviously had nothing to do with CACs or child abuse or anything like that. But what did you think about that video?
We couldn't see the video, Pam. It didn't play.
Oh no. Well, so cancel that question. It's a really good video. Yeah. Well, I will send you the link when we're done, and then people can watch it on their own.
Yep, I sent it out.
Okay, great, thank you. It's talking about, one person can do a lot, but together we can do even more. And it's a great video that has nothing to do with CACs or child abuse. In fact, it looks like it may even have something to do with military, but I thought it was really valuable. And I'm really sorry that it didn't play. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great, great. So when someone doesn't participate regularly, the whole team suffers. And of course, the child and family. It's having done basically case reviews before CACs, it breaks my heart when I see child advocacy centers that sort of use the case review as a checklist. Where are you in this case? Okay, has it been submitted to the prosecutor? Okay, or do you still have custody of the children? Okay, there's no case planning or discussion about the case or the impact of the investigation on the child and family, and that's not helpful, and it's kind of a waste of time, which is one of the most common complaints when I'm talking to team members here in Alaska, because I don't get to do accreditation site reviews here. One of the most common complaints is that it's a waste of time. I get nothing out of it.
Pam,
again-
can you elaborate a little bit? Hey, this is Cindy. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that? Like, when you mentioned the case,
With case review. With case review.
imagining how we do ours. So I guess, can you elaborate a little bit
On it?
more?
On what case review should be,
Kind
or
of like that, or like how we take turns talking about the case, each one of us in the MDT, and that's kind of what you're saying. It's not happening, right? When that doesn't happen?
correct,
Okay.
correct. Yeah, case reviews really are to review cases. It's not to fill in your data system.
Right, but it's to let each agency get to say their 2 cents of where they're at with it, right? Correct.
Well, it's basically an update, and that includes, okay, how's it going with the family? Because, for example, the mental health provider or the advocate very
Right.
likely has information that the others don't. How's it going with the family? What are their needs right now? What should we be watching out for? How are they feeling about talking to the investigator again?
Right.
Those kinds of things. And then strategizing as a team. So, okay, advocate, maybe you can work with caregiver and with child on, ways that they will be more comfortable talking with the
Right.
interviewer, that kind of exchange.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I thought maybe you had more to add. So I was like, does she have more to tell us we could be doing? No, that's exactly what we're doing. I just thought maybe you had something new.
No, nothing new. Sorry, Cindy. And some of this is directly from the standard, and I'm not going to read because you all can read, I'm assuming, and kind of annoying to me when presenters read from slides. So and I think probably you all know this, so a lot of this is just review. And that's that every CAC and MDT needs to have a clearly defined process and to talk about, what kind of cases do you review? Smaller centers usually review every one. Large centers that see, hundreds of cases a year can't possibly review everyone. Like when we were doing interagency case staffing, there were 3 Cs, conflicted, confusing, and I can't remember complicated. And that, we didn't know anything about setting standards or, accreditation didn't even exist then for CACs didn't. And so, having that kind of standard for what cases you're going to review is really important. So sometimes there's confusion about who should attend. And this again is directly from the standard. And sometimes it's hard to get people there, obviously. Sometimes there's good reasons, like, the person who normally attends got sick or is in the hospital. Or one case review I sat in on, none of the law enforcement was there because there had just been a murder a couple of hours ago. So there's always those reasons, but there are some people who just don't attend. And that will be a problem as far as accreditation. But more important than accreditation, that's a problem as far as getting things done, helping, working the case, finding referrals and resources for the family, and helping to understand what's going on in the family and how to approach them and help them. A lot of times mental health folks will say, well, none of my cases, or medical will say, well, none of my cases are being discussed today, so I'm not going to show up. That's a mistake, because the mental health provider and the medical provider have information that can be really helpful and critical to the case. Not case specific information, but general information. I sat in on one case review where the medical provider came to all of the cases. They were talking about a case she wasn't involved in about a toddler with broken bones. And she said, did anybody order a bone scan on this child? Because if he's got one broken bone, chances are there's evidence of others, and nobody had thought about it. So they left there, and that was part of their plans. Same thing with mental health providers. I sat in on another case review where law enforcement talked about, well, this 12-year-old, she just sat there when I was trying to talk to her. She had no emotion across her face at all. She was clearly lying. When what he was describing was dissociation, which is, as I'm sure you all know, an indication of significant trauma. And the mental health provider could have very well used that as an opportunity to educate that particular law enforcement officer, but the whole team. Instead, they left thinking that was an indication of lying. And then other centers, these are the core ones that are required. And then some centers have GALs on their team. Some people have the civil prosecutors on their team. Some people have somebody from the school district on their team. Many people in Alaska have a tribal representative on the team. So that is something that the team needs to decide. And sometimes I think that gets we forget about that. It's like, these are not decisions that the CAC gets to make by themselves. It's a team decision. Does anybody so as we're going along, so those of you who've heard me before know that I'm pretty informal. As we're going along, if you have questions, please ask them. And I may say, oh, good question, we're going to get to that in a minute. Or I may say, great question, let's talk about it now. So please do ask if you've got questions. So again, a reminder of what case review should include, again, directly from the standard. Are any of you thinking, oh, wow, we don't talk about all of those things? Or are any of you thinking, yes, we're doing all those things? Yay. Ooh, several of you are doing all of these things. That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Case review should also include, and I think some of these things are the ones that, especially in the larger CACs, or maybe even some of the older CACs, these things get left out. They're just not thought about. And I'm sure that you all can very much relate to the difference that this can make. And, you know, a child or a family who was really supportive, and then the perpetrator has been really, really working on them, and now all of a sudden is not supportive, that's kind of important to the case. And a good strategy for addressing that needs to be developed. And then the updates, the issues of cultural relevance, and that sometimes we think of that in too narrow of a scope. If, for example, you have a family with very strong religious beliefs, that may be important to know. If you have a same-sex family, that's important to know, and that may impact, you know, many different aspects of the case. There are many things having to do with the culture of the family that sometimes get overlooked. And that provision for court education and support and accompaniment, that is huge. I was talking to someone yesterday who, or a couple of, maybe it was last week, who had no court prep. There was not a CAC. And as a child, as a grade school child, this person was just plopped in the court in front of the perpetrator with no preparation at all. Suppose that was traumatic? Yeah, it was. And CACs are really, it's really important that that be part of the discussion when a case is going to court, which we know doesn't happen as often as we would wish it would. The legal rights, and it's important, you know, a lot of times we do talk about, you know, the negative impact that we are having on a child, which is important to acknowledge and know and think about how to address. But it's also important to acknowledge the positive impact. And I think a lot of times we forget about celebrating those. And it's so amazing. Some of you have been doing this long enough, I'm sure, that you've gotten to see the results of an effective intervention. And even if it's, you know, 10 years down the road, sharing that with your team is awesome. It sometimes brings hope when things are feeling pretty hopeless. And then I think some teams don't even, some case review meetings don't even include, you know, sort of coming up with a plan on how to address issues that have been raised. So there's no follow-up. because there's been no discussion of that. That is an important piece of the case review and of the standard. And it needs to include where you're sharing the information with the missing team members. Make sure that someone is identified to share that, as well as coming up with recommendations and assignments, as in, okay, mental health person, you have agreed that you're going to, sort of help prep the child for court, and et cetera, et cetera. And then, bring the case back as needed, which for many of these cases is definitely a requirement. Challenges. Now we're getting into the real meat of the discussion, and the thing that makes us all crazy. And that's obviously poor attendance. Those disciplines that won't attend, or if they do, they don't share information, or knowledge or experience. And if the participants see no value in the case review, then nothing gets, accomplished. And that's a really big challenge that a lot of centers face. And then conflict when, for some reason, it seems like CPS is the sort of easy target for everybody to get mad at, or law enforcement, like, well, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? And, it's pretty easy to be judgmental. And then those meetings where no one seems to be in charge, which honestly is one of the reasons that a team facilitator training was added to the accreditation standards this last time around, which I love. I think that's really important. Facilitating is a special skill, and like any skill, you need some knowledge and some training in it. And I think that that role maybe was not appreciated and respected as much as it needed to be. So I'm very happy that that was added to the standards. Those unclear roles of team members, I'll bet you, I wish we were in person so I could have you raise your hands, but I'll bet you have all been at meetings, and probably most of us have thought it ourselves, where we think that we know what the other team members should be doing. That role blurring, that boundary, and instead of trying to understand what their parameters are, it's pretty easy to sit in judgment. And what else? Anybody else? What are some other challenges to your case review? And you can either write them in the chat or, unmute yourself, which would be nice because I get tired of hearing myself talk.
Hi, Pam. Good morning. So
Hey.
I would say, I'm from the Queer Child Advocacy Center. I would say one of the things for us that is a constant challenge is the turnover in staff. So when staff turns over, they're not familiar with the cases. There's not always a good pass off between the cases, and cases get lost, they get dropped. And so we have people that come to the meetings, they're unprepared, or they're unfamiliar with the cases, or the cases just get lost, altogether lost. And so that's the turnover in staffing is a big issue for us, or even us. At one point we were down to just like 2 staff at the CAC. So since we kind of direct our MDT, just even for us to get everything together and be prepared was difficult for us as we were running the CAC. To also be prepared for the meetings was just a stretch. So I would say staffing and just the transition of positions is a big challenge for us.
Huge challenge, and thank you, because that is a challenge. I think everywhere is turnover, and I will say that is one of the reasons that the requirement for MDT orientation was added to the standards this last time around. which, you know, makes complete sense. It also, I acknowledge, can sometimes be really challenging. It's like, okay, so in spite, you know, we're down to 2 staff, and now we're supposed to orient the new team members that come in every couple of months. I'm familiar with that, but that's a great challenge. Sadly, that's a great challenge, and I know here in Alaska, especially in rural Alaska, many of the team players change at least every other year, sometimes more often. So thank you for that. Anybody else have some challenges that are not included?
Yeah, Pam, just to bounce off what she said too, was I think me watching in the last 4.5 years, the change with our leadership. Now, when I notice when we meet for MDT, Dr. Ashley Davis will ask when she approaches a department that has lots of turnover, she'll say, is there anybody new? And is there anybody new to your staff? And then we invite them over for coffee or to give them a tour of our facility. So I think that's really helpful. I notice that's when you got somebody new, invite them to your center and give them a tour. But I think that's it's a challenge, but I think we're finding ways to overcome them.
Exactly, and there are ways to overcome, and we're gonna get to that shortly. Thank you, Cindy. Any other challenges that that we haven't thought about yet? There probably are, but and I would love to hear from you.
Pam, it's me again. So I just wanted to say, and I don't know if this is something that you guys do, but we sometimes have challenges where one agency's protocol is different than somebody else's protocol, or their understanding of like how an MOA or an MOU works becomes a problem. Because we've had MDTs where, say we're in a meeting with OCS and they're, depending on the OCS worker, depends on which and who's representing that, which will depend on what information they're comfortable in sharing. And it's just their understanding of what their MOU reads. And so just being knowledgeable on like the restrictions and the guidelines of their MOUs and MOAs can be different. And it can be frustrating because if you're used to getting a certain amount of information and then all of a sudden you can't get that information, it can be really frustrating.
Yes. So it's that sort of lack of knowledge of what case review is all about. And at least in Alaska, the fact that case review is in statute and it's protected in statute. So that sort of goes down to, you know, it's usually the CAC needs to understand that and have knowledge and training in that area. You're so right. Thank you for bringing that up. So facilitation. I know you've probably all been to meetings and not just case review meetings where there's a facilitator who does all the talking. That's not facilitation, and doesn't let anybody else really talk. Or if they do talk, they interrupt them or they basically tell them they're wrong. Or you've probably been to meetings where you don't even know who the facilitator is because they're so quiet. They don't say anything and people walk all over them. So a strong facilitator is huge, because I know you've probably all also been to meetings that is clearly facilitated, it's clearly guided, the facilitator is prepared, she or he sort of models the behavior that they need to see as a team. They set an example. They follow the guidelines that have been set by the team. Again, team. And those are the ones that are awesome. Those are the facilitators that, you know, you just all want to clone. Oh yes. mediation. Sometimes as a CAC, you mediate, you know, conflicts between team members. Oh, I put that follows guidelines established by the team twice, I guess, because I think it's important. And a strong facilitator really is able to stay focused on the reason behind the case review, and does not allow them or themselves or the team to sort of go down some rabbit hole somewhere. And you've probably all seen that too, you know, where, and it's usually one or two people that are really good at, you know, taking the team entirely off track. Not that it's not an interesting discussion, but it's not accomplishing the goal. And everybody has individual strengths. Sometimes it's hard to find those, but they're all there. And, you know, you do have to be flexible and brainstorming. I mean, some of these cases and the issues the challenges that we find are mind-boggling. And so you have to be able to think outside the box. You have to be able to brainstorm as a team as to what we do, how we do it, what resources we, you know, refer to, any and all of those things. So now is where we're going to break you out into groups and have a group discussion. So this is about looking for solutions. So we're going to break you out into 3 groups. Group number 1 is going to talk about poor attendance and lack of participation. Come up with the brainstorming we were just talking about. This is your opportunity to brainstorm. Come up with brainstorming for poor attendance and lack of participation. Group 2, that lack of leadership and unclear roles. And group 3, conflict. And Dina, will you just break people out, and we'll give you maybe 10 minutes. I know these breakout sessions never seem long enough to me, but if we'll give you 10 minutes. And I see a couple of people have given some preferences. So Dina, I'll just let you take it away. Or Deanna, I apologize.
Yeah,
I think
that's okay. I'm just I can't really assign them manually with this bigger group. I'm just gonna do automatically. So it would be, I think it'd be too hard to let everybody participate. But if you just don't want to be in that group at all, you can maybe come out and I'll put you back into a group, or you can pick one that way. So I'm gonna send you into right now.
Okay, put on your brainstorming hats, everyone. See you in 10 minutes. Okay, do we have everyone back, Deanna?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so thanks everyone. Was this another case where it didn't feel like you had enough time? No, okay. So who wants to speak for group number 1, where you talked about solutions for poor attendance and lack of participation?
We didn't really choose a presenter, but I guess we can all chip in. Part of the solutions we identified for ensuring that there was enhanced participation was to ensure that the meetings were being held at a time that was convenient to the participants. There was also one person who spoke of, for want of a better word, incentivizing participation by providing lunch, and they found that that had worked. Again, if it is that we have a very clear understanding in terms of what we're to get out of the case review for each of the participating agencies, and that their voices are heard, and that there is a clear understanding of the impact that MDT participation plays in the whole process, then of course you have engagement and the support in terms of participation from the various players. I don't know if anybody else wants to add in terms of what we had discussed.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add anything to that in the group or in a different group? Anybody else have any good ideas? I will say that personally at my own MDT, we definitely found that food made a difference. And what was really interesting was we found that breakfast worked better than lunch before they got to the office and were, taken up with other things and had a lot of other distractions. Thankfully, I had an assistant who loved fixing breakfast. So she would fix breakfast for everyone. And people would just stop by for a case review before they even went into the office. So bribing with food is good. That works. And I liked what you said, that if I heard you right, basically was saying, ask people, what can be done to make it more valuable for them. That was awesome, you guys. Group 2, lack of leadership and unclear roles. What brainstorming ideas did you come up to address that?
I'll speak. We did talk about having other agencies come and do a tour of the CAC to build that relationship and to introduce them on not just the building, but how MDT works, how not peer review, case review works. And we were just discussing, especially working in remote Alaska, the times that there wasn't anybody in our manager roles, just trying to keep that communication going with other agencies, being involved with Alaska Children's Alliance, making connections that way. But we also discussed how amazing it is to have a very strong supervisor who is very encouraging on building those relationships and what a difference that makes. I think there was a couple more things we talked about, but I'll let somebody else speak on that.
Thank you, Mandy. Who else wants to talk about the other things? Nobody else? Did Mandy touch on everything?
I was in breakout room 2, but I just had a technology issue, so I kind of missed part of that, so I don't know what she touched on. Yeah, so I don't know how helpful I can be.
Well, thank you for Olivia for saying that. I think one of the things that really stuck out to me that I really appreciate as far as your ideas for solutions is reaching out to the chapter. You all have chapters in your states, and there's been quite a bit of turnover among chapters in the last handful of years too. And I know some chapters have hired directors with a lot of experience, and others have directors with little or no experience, but they do have connections. They can reach out to other states and find out what's happening. Most of the chapter people do work with the heads of some of the disciplines that you need to have there, like with your state Department of Public Safety or your state CPS. So reaching out to the chapter can be very helpful. So I'm really glad that you guys thought of that. Does anybody else that was not in group 2 want to add anything to that? Ideas for addressing lack of leadership and unclear roles? I think the unclear roles is definitely a challenge that many centers face, especially with the turnover. Sometimes you just get new people that aren't even sure what their role is. Although there's oftentimes plenty of people on the team who will tell them what their role is, but that's not necessarily helpful. So the third one, the third group we need to hear from are what are some ideas for handling conflict on the team? When, you know, two people come in and they obviously are mad at each other, they snub each other, you know, you kind of wonder if you're in kindergarten, or maybe they're not that obvious. But what ideas did you come up with handling conflict?
I mean, I'll just speak for our agency, but luckily we're a smaller agency and we don't really have a whole lot of conflict. We're privileged to have a very good MDT coordinator who has very good rapport with all of our partners, and just haven't really seen a lot of conflict. But if there is some maybe some disagreements or something with amongst our partners, she's able to diffuse that pretty quickly. She's able to, you know, kind of get the conversation going between whether it be a CPS partner or a law enforcement partner, whoever it may be, district attorney's office, whoever it may be, and get that conversation going so that she can get that conversation going, whether it be in case review or if it's outside of case review, whether it be before or after an interview. And then, kind of like you said, Pam, we do feed breakfast, and I think it's hard to get upset when you have a full belly. So that seems to help a whole lot with, so we don't have conflict. I think people don't get too upset when they're real happy with you with a stomach full of bacon. So you know, it really does help around here. But that seems to be, you know, it's what's very helpful when you have that highly trained MDT facilitator. So that helps us. That helps us a lot. It didn't seem to be in our group that we have noticed a whole lot of conflict amongst our agencies, but that's just kind of what I heard in speaking with the people in my group.
Thank you, Nicole. And yeah, count your blessings. What I've learned over the years is that it only takes a change of one person and things can go from bad to wonderful or the other way around. But and I love hearing that about the food. What, anybody else in group 3?
We have kind of like for lack of a better terminology, a rules of conduct that is part of our MDT process that everybody's to acknowledge beforehand about being respectful of others and keeping it a safe place. And then I think just having a designated kind of layout of if conflict arises, what, you know, this is what we're going to do to dissolve it.
You hit on two really important aspects. One is your team protocols should include a conflict resolution policy. And sometimes people have to be reminded about that. And I have seen those sort of team code of ethics or team behavior, or whatever label it gets given, posted on walls in the room where the team meets. And that's the feedback that I've gotten from the places that use that is that that's really helpful, because sometimes, you know, we get really emotional about some of the cases, many of the cases sometimes. And it's good to have a visual reminder. Decades and decades and decades ago, when I, in a galaxy far, far away, having nothing to do with child abuse, I owned a retail business, and there were a lot of sales training. And the more senses that you use, the more people remember them. Like if you've ever gone to buy a new car, They want you to get inside it, right? Because they want you to smell the new car smell. They want you to feel what it's like. So having that visual reminder can be very helpful. Thank you for that. Anything else on conflict? Okay. So moving right along. So one of the benefits of like discussions like this is sometimes that even though things are going along well, it helps us think about why they're going well. So that when they stop going well, we can try and bring it back to that place of, a healthy functioning team. And the teams that are going well, they do have a strong facilitator with the emphasis on the facilitation. Strong does not mean that they do all the talking, and that respect. And I know sometimes that's hard to do when you feel like somebody is not doing their job or being disrespectful to you, blah, blah. But each discipline does bring something important to the table. And I think sometimes this is overlooked, and that's develop team goals. And I think that is an important discussion to have on a regular basis, especially when, there's so much turnover on teams, is having a team discussion. What goals do we want to set for ourselves as a team? And then that whole, fairness to each other, fairness to yourself. I'm pretty sure that at least some, if not all of you, sometimes have unrealistic expectations of yourselves. And always, 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 it boils down to the children and families. And then that opportunity to celebrate successes. What are some of the ways that you and your teams have celebrated successes? Because I know some of you have.
Here in Dillingham, we're like big givers, so we like put little packages together for our MDT and put like coffee cups and stress balls, and that's kind of our way when we have someone new come on board. We celebrate with them with our little logos and even inviting them out. Just recently, we invited out one of our MDTs for a birthday snack, and it was just a small gathering, but it was just that connection to be able to make that connection. So, yeah.
Thanks, Cindy. That's important. Who else?
We're getting ready to do our MDT Thanksgiving. So we do that every year. We all bring dishes, and all the staff brings some type of a side dish, and then we have someone that does the turkey. And then we also do a 4th of July picnic type gathering for them. And then we hand out a yearly like MDT partner award during the 4th of July lunch. So we do different things like that throughout the year. I think we also do like Cindy said, a gift basket, once a year as well. So they get fed good a couple times, and they get some gift baskets and just different things like that throughout the year.
Great. What I noticed about both of your comments and sharing what you do is that what you are doing is humanizing the disciplines, and you are developing relationships. You're getting to know each other outside of the CACs and the cases and the expectations, which I think is huge. Any other Any other things? I'm pretty sure you probably have some. Well, I have an example, and Deanna, thank you. She put a link to a practice brief that speaks to relationship building, and I think, I think no matter how many years you've done this, like in my case, 35 plus, we still learn from each other. And a perfect example of that, that relationship building was, I was really, really, really having a negative response to a CPS supervisor that I had actually worked with for years. And we went to a team building retreat. And I have to tell you, I was not looking forward to spending time with her. It was probably mutual. I'm pretty sure it was mutual. And, we had so much fun. And we did, there was a lot of creative things that we had to do that were really, laughed hysterically. And when it was over, it was just a, 2-day weekend. We were friends again. We remembered what it was that we liked about each other. We learned new things about each other. And it's pretty hard to maintain a negative attitude after you've laughed so hard you cried. So that's the things that you guys were describing. And let's see here. Dean said, Dean Johnson. Oh, Jay. I can't remember what your first name is, but anyway, Jay said that you do a annual MDT appreciation cookout, and then a gift to the CAC members. And, I sort of joked earlier about bribing with food, but it really is about appreciating, and acknowledging that this is hard work, acknowledging, that we're human and we all bring something to the table. And sometimes that gets overlooked. So I love your ideas. Any additional ideas on how to manage, conflict and celebrate your successes?
We will do like a verbal accolade, like if we've had something and that we're doing a case review and everything went really well, we'll make sure to verbally acknowledge the fact that, hey, we did a really good job here, and kind of, hats off to everybody, kudos to everybody. We want you to know you did a good job.
That's a good reminder.
It is. We're human beings seem to be like this. I think that's unfortunate that we're made that way, but it's much easier to, find fault and complain than it is to, point out the successes. And humor is always great, like, like awards, as long as it's not mean humor, but that's also great fun. Once you start doing that, people start looking more forward to being part of a group that is fun to be with, and acknowledges the hard stuff and is sympathetic, and gifts are, it's not important what it is. What's important really is the fact that you thought enough about somebody to bring them. I remember one year during the holidays, we put together baskets of cookies and took to, the individual members of our team. And when we took it into the prosecutor's office, she burst into tears because she was feeling like everybody was critical. She never did a good enough job. She wasn't accepting enough cases. The cases she did accept, she won usually because she was darn good. But, and it just made such a difference. And then when we took the basket to the state trooper's office, they were so excited. They all came out and, got a picture because that was a big basket, you can imagine. So it's those ways of letting people know that you care. So that's all really important. But what do you do for yourselves? I mean, you're part of the team too. And not only do you have the burden of the cases, you also have the burden of herding this group of cats called a MDT. How do you take care of yourselves? Does this mean you don't? Linda, are you thinking about saying something?
No, I muted by accident.
Oh, okay. Darn. um,
I have to say, we're reminded a lot to take care of ourselves. And so just even being reminded makes you feel like you're being taken care of yourself. I mean, we have our supervision now it's always brought up. The last thing that they say is like, and last but mostly, take care of yourselves. And for me, just hearing it makes it feel so good. Just even someone saying it. So even not even having to do something, just hearing it from somebody else that tells you to take care of yourself can make you feel really good. So just words that don't even cost anything, but knowing that. And then also BDHC, they've now once a year they take 4 hours mental health hours that we can put aside just to leave early that day. Or but again, I think if you have a supervisor who understands if we have a really bad case, that just go home for the rest of the day. This was really, really bad. Taking care of ourselves. My personal view of it is I'm just being reminded of it, that I don't have to run out and go get a massage or something, well, that's just my thought on it.
Any supervisors in the group, take heed. And of course, those words are only effective if they're truly meant. I mean, we all, or at least I do, I try to keep it internal, eye rolling when people just use a bunch of the right words, but they don't, when somebody means it. And I think that's really important. Another way to build team relationships is going to trainings together. CACs are sort of known for working to ensure that their team members get training. And that is actually, as you probably all know, one of the requirements in most of the standards is some sort of training. And going to those trainings together can be really important and really helpful. But that only really works if you hang out as a team. So, if all the prosecutors go hang out with the other prosecutors in the state or law enforcement, that's not all that helpful. So if you're paying for part or all of the training, whether it's, you paid the registration, travel and lodging, you can kind of say, okay, but the only criteria here is you have to hang out with the team. And so that's a really important thing. Anything else? Any other ideas? You guys are really quiet, which is another reason the virtual ones are really hard, because I can't see you. So I don't know if you're falling asleep.
Pam, I was gonna say that for us, we fall under an umbrella agency, but for us, one of the things that we're working on doing is we get volunteer hours. So we get like 4 volunteer hours a month. But most of that is to go volunteer at a school or a boys and girls club. And, we don't want to work with kids. And so one of the things that because we do it all the time. And so one of the things that we're really trying to lobby on an agency level is that we be able to use our volunteer time to do mental health things, like maybe it's us going to do berry picking or a subsistence activity or take a nap or sit on the beach or read a book or just do something that's for mental health and not so much volunteering, because we do have high stress jobs that does come with a lot of secondary trauma. And a lot of times what we don't want to do is to go into another school or another environment around kids. And it's not that we don't love them, it's just that we're burnt out on that. And so I think, support from our immediate team, but sometimes even on just a larger agency, just kind of petitioning so that's one of the things that we're working on is from the head down, recognizing that we're not all the same. And so we need to take care of ourselves a little differently. So that's one of the things that we're doing.
So that's awesome. And you hit on a couple of things. One is that need to keep yourself balanced and, to do something else. And that may be working with kids, but doing something where you're around, healthy families and healthy kids so that you don't get as warped quite as quickly. And the other thing that you hit on is, people who make these decisions don't know unless we tell them. And, they're not mind readers. And if they're not doing the work, they cannot really wrap their mind around, the stress that it brings and all of that. So I love that as a group, you are going to the decision makers in your umbrella organization and saying, we love this idea. It's a great idea. Can we do something a little different? And good luck with that. I think, that would be awesome. And I love that you're taking those steps. And, they may say no the first time around, but, that doesn't mean they won't think about it and that they could change their mind. So I love that you're doing that. Anything else? So just a reminder that Deanna posted a link to the Native Child Advocacy Resource Center webs. They have some really useful and helpful information there. And then I've posted a link here on some product that the Northeast Regional CAC put out that is awesome. It's about building a better case review together. You can find it online. The regionals, not only do the chapters have some really good information and resources, the regionals have some outstanding resources. They got together as regionals and sort of divided up the big challenges that they were seeing across the country with the CACs. And, each region took an area that was of particular interest to them, or that they had, staff that were particularly qualified to address them. And they have done some outstanding work. And this document is really useful. And what I like it's about together, because none of us get to do this all by ourselves. We don't get to go in. Some days we would like to, but we don't get to go in and say, okay, team, this is how you're going to do it. This is how you're going to behave. Nope, it doesn't work that way. The team, that's one of those discussions. So people are not showing up for case review. How can we make it worth your time? because two things. One, it does the team thing, right? And two, it helps them be responsible for these things, right? Because that's one of the purposes of an MDT is to, support each other and hold each other accountable. So, any questions? Any last minute questions? I'm going to stop the screen share. Questions. I know there were some questions that you all asked when you registered. Anybody feel like they didn't get answered or have an additional question or a separate one? Deanna, did we miss any answers to some of the questions that you got?
No, the only one that I can see was a question about well, we did that one. There were some specific questions about disciplines and how to keep certain disciplines engaged at the case review. We kind of talked about that a little bit. Team engagement, the purpose of NDT, and having our team members understand what that is, and conflict. So I think that we really covered them all.
Good, good. And I would reiterate that if a certain discipline is not participating, talk to them, ask them what they need. It seems like maybe this isn't working for you. What can we do to make this work for you? That's one of the big challenges of relationships is remembering to communicate, I think anyway. I don't know about the rest of you, but I know, when my husband tries to tell me what I'm feeling, it's kind of ugly. So we should check in with people and not think that we know what they're feeling and needing. So I think that's really important. Anything else, or do you all want to be done 5 minutes early?
I'll just say real quick, I really enjoyed this training. I got some really good tips off there from other CACs and stuff. So I really enjoyed it. And some of the handouts that went with it too are good. So thank you for inviting us. Yeah, it's very interesting. And it helps. It helps like re-plug in and get some more stimulation and thinking of ideas. And so it's very helpful. Thank you. And knowing that we're not the only CAC that struggles with some of the things, but I don't know if CACs are on wavelengths, but I just feel like we're at a high right now, probably because we have a full team and everything's kind of working out and just hoping it stays that way. But yeah.
I did share a YouTube video. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's on herding cats. And I used to say when I was a coordinator of a team that that's what I felt like, it's like herding cats. And so I just did that just for a laugh for you guys. But from the Native Child Advocacy Resource Center, we appreciate you guys coming, and we appreciate Pam for doing such a great job on talking to us about case review and giving us some tips on how to do a better job and meet the needs of our team. So we appreciate that.
And thank you, everybody. Just never ever doubt that you make a difference, because you do. And it's hard work. I've often said that this is the hardest work I've ever done and the most rewarding. And so thank you. You guys are awesome. And thank you, Deanna, and the organization for having me. Goodbye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sorry.